Do I need? Hi, good afternoon. Do I need the mic?
No.
Or can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for coming. We're a little bit late starting, but I think we're all set up now so we can talk. So what I think I'd just like to do is start out by introducing you to the team. And that is the team. What you will notice when you see the team members is that actually we are all very different in terms of background. So you've got myself, who's basically financial services and Big Four. You've got Mohammed Shukri, who is civil defense, lieutenant colonel in civil defense, and basically specialized in disaster risk management. And you've got Jassim Buttigieg, who is a COO at Cyclone and very much specializes in legal, finance, and technology. So we bring a very different set of skills and we bring a very different set of experiences to bear here. But what we do have in common is that we all do agree that the issue of climate risk is very big, and that is something that we want to basically get ourselves organized in terms of doing something about it, and that is what we're working on here. Now there is actually a fourth member of our team as well, who is the leader of climate governance in Malaysia, Dato Sri Sunita Rajkumar. She's very, very much core to the team, but she is not presented today. But very much, we're all part of the same thing at the end of the day. So what we'd like to do is, by the time you leave, we would like you to walk out of here sort of understanding the value of presenting climate risk visually against a geographic map of Malaysia, and also how does that help with regard to making Malaysia a more resilient country. So with that introduction, let me hand you over to, sorry, I'll just tell you what we're going to be saying. So Shukri will be coming on next, and he'll be talking about the problem itself, i.e. What is the climate risk situation in Malaysia, and what are the key risk elements that Malaysia is subject to. I will then come in and talk about the business model of the climate risk database, dashboard, and also about the importance of data. What you will find is that data pervades the entire discussion. Data is critical, getting data is very important, and so data is our biggest challenge as well as our biggest opportunity. And then Jassim will come in and he will actually demonstrate to you what the dashboard looks like, so you can take all our words and you can actually see how it looks. And again, talk about technology and how it's used to leverage data. And after that, we can open up for questions. Hello. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Is it? Hello? Right. So I thought my voice would be quite better. Okay, just to have a glance, you've been briefed before. I'm from civil defense. I'm not dealt with the climate change actually, but my study comes bring me into this kind of efforts where we need collaboration among several members, especially from the government, the private sectors, NGOs, and also researchers, because we know that we contribute to climate change. And you can see here, actually, we contribute to the impact of environmental factors in our daily lives, right, without our realizing it. To be clearly precise, our current condition, based on the last year by the IPCC, our temperature changed up to 1.1 degrees Celsius. But the IPCC does, set a target that it should be below 1.5 degrees Celsius before 2030, right? 2025 actually. Just to make clear, what is the difference between the slight changes of temperature among us? Alright, you can see that here we have compared about 1.5 degrees Celsius to 2 degrees Celsius of global warming. You can see for some example, like you can have extreme weather changes by 100% if we keep 1.5 degrees Celsius weather changes up to
2 degrees Celsius, then will be 170 huge gaps of impact. And to be precise, in Malaysia, it will be predicted that we'll achieve by 1.5 degrees Celsius in 2050. Right? And during this time, by 2020 up to 2029, we are facing a lot of rainfall anomalies. You can see previously we have monsoonal floods, like the Kelantan floods. We know it happens during October and also October until February. And we know that the central region or the northern region parts will be flooded around July or August. But now, it's been slightly changed. We couldn't predict the floods anymore. Okay? So what happens, you can see that the temperature change from, this is from the Malaysia case. From 1901 until 2021, you can see the colors becomes more redder. I mean, the temperature change rapidly. And the most affected area, the most affected disaster, natural hazard disasters is mostly on the floods. Okay? And this is our risk at this moment. Yeah, we might feel that this is something that not being shared. That is why we bring up to you this climate dashboard so that everybody will learn what will happen in Malaysia around 2030, 2050s. More than 20 to 30 years in the future. But at the current moment, we have a total of 629 climate-related disasters since 2008 and 2023. And a total of 945,000 people have been evacuated out of their homes due to climate hazards like floods, landslides, storms. And it is predicted by the climate scientists that almost the 25% of Malaysia population, 25% we can multiply by around 30 millions of Malaysian populations will be displaced in 2030. So around another 6 years, right? So almost a quarter of the Malaysian population will be displaced for, according to the climate scientists. And you can see most of the area and coastal area will be heavily affected with floods. While we have also the highlands, most of the northern area. So this area will be affected with the landslides. And around our coastal, there will be heavily impact with the sea level rise, with coastal erosions. And the other factors is about drought. This is something that been triggered recently, right? Due to El Nino. Yeah. So people are having, we are going to have a heavy droughts this year, but eventually it won't happen. I'm not sure, but this is data from the NAHRIM that we predict that the most hottest area is especially in Johor and Terengganu. To be clear, these four countries, these four states of Johor, Pahang, Selangor, Perak has heavy impact with the climate change, with the climate-related disasters such as floods, landslides, and also thunderstorms. Okay. Therefore, you can see, as I presented before, most of the data comes from various agencies, comes from various sources. So we need to have a very good platform that we can combine wherever a responder like me, civil defense, when we're going to respond on disasters, we need some very accurate data, live data streaming that could help us in defining what kind of strategy that we can provide, or what kind of distribution aid that we can provide to the, say, the affected members of disasters, especially like the Sri Muda events, where everybody keep blaming the government, right? So, but they don't know the actual conditions that we are facing difficulties on providing the aids, especially in Sri Muda. Can you imagine if you provide, if you bring a boat into the urban area, whereby the boat's motor will scratch all your cars, the sunk cars, right? So this kind of strategies that we need to be prepared for. And therefore, we promote the multi-state partnerships, knowledge sharing and capacity buildings, resource mobilization, and also community-led approaches. So then I will continue to my colleagues.
Sure. Fine.
Yeah.
Thanks. So I think given the different scenarios that we have in terms of the climate risk that we've just seen, that is basically what we will be looking at in terms of the climate risk dashboard. So this is just a really simple picture of the climate risk dashboard in terms of the business model. But basically the important thing at the moment is that we actually have, we see ourselves as having a mission in terms of this particular project. And the mission is to improve the resilience of Malaysia by sharing relevant climate data to the entire Malaysian population at no cost, with the objective that each individual can make up his or her own mind with data in an informed way as to how they want to respond to climate issues. Now that's what we see ourselves as doing, i.e. improving the resilience of Malaysia by helping people to decide, make informed decisions around their lives, their work, their location where they want to live, etc., with the idea of climate in mind, and giving them the opportunity to do that. So for example, we talked about displaced people, and we talked about net zero. 40% of Malaysia's power is produced by coal. All that coal power plants are going to have to be decommissioned as part of net zero. So you're going to have areas which are blighted by climate risk and by net zero requirements that basically are going to lead to people having to find employment elsewhere. And with the idea of just transition, we don't really want to leave these people dangling. We want them to be able to make good decisions, informed decisions. And so we think that giving them access to something like the risk dashboard allows them to see where they can find green jobs and where they might want to be living. So that's the objective. That's where we're trying to go to. And I'm giving that to you just as a background before we go into the risk itself. The other thing is that I mentioned that the data is going to be provided for the whole nation for free. Okay, so we are not charging for the data comes at no cost. That is part of the business model as well. So basically, what that means is that we have no profit motive. This is not a business to make profit. This is more of a service that we're going to offer back to the country. So how do we do that? How do we get all this data, which I've already said is a real challenge? How do we get it for free? Well, we need to work we need to first of all work in a very open, collaborative way with a lot of stakeholders who actually hold that data. We're helped by our business model because by being non-profit and by having a mission statement, effectively it means that we are non-competitive. We have no conflicts of interest, and they can share their data with us in theory without having to worry about us biasing it or trying to create a profit out of it for ourselves, but that's actually not what we stand for. That's why the business model is important in terms of trying to get the data for free so we can pass it on for free. What we do is we will talk to our stakeholders, we will collaborate with them, and I'll come on to who they are, collaborate with them, and then effectively we become a data aggregator. We hold all that data, and then we basically and we hold it in a structured format, and then we use that aggregated data to fundamentally put out the climate dashboard, so to speak. We will, therefore, once we get the data, we will be publishing clear, timely. We want the data to be near real time, so that it's relevant, and it will be set up in structured frameworks and presented as such. What will it look like? Well, it will be basically clear visual images of the climate risks. So if the risk is, for example, greenhouse gases or methane plumes or landslides, flooding, drought, whatever the climate element may be, those elements will be represented on a map of Malaysia within the geographical region which they relate. So you will see the data issue, you will see the climate issues across the map. It will be up to date and it will be relevant for everybody to look at and understand what's happening with climate. So that's basically what it is. Now, you know, if I'm to be bold enough to draw a comparison, and it's a very wide comparison, but it does work a little bit. So we're not, in some ways, we're not different from Wikipedia, which takes in a lot of data from everybody and then publishes out that data in terms of as a knowledge base, so that everybody can benefit from it. And this is, in some way, this is similar when we take in that data and we do the same thing. It gives you an idea of what the business model looks like. Who are our partners, our potential partners, our stakeholders? Well, the first one is the government. The government has numerous agencies sitting on numerous islands of data. These islands of data are not shared, they're not made public, and if we are able to get them to share that with us, we think we can exponentially add value for the nation by taking that data and presenting it to everybody in terms of how we might address areas of climate risk. The second is actually professional data companies. It could be S&P, it could be Reuters, it could be scientific companies that work on data, and that we could work with them as well. They are particularly the ones who need to understand that we don't compete and we have no conflicts of interest. That's the only way. Obviously, data is their money and their business, and that's what we need to convince them of. And the third one, which I'll come to later, is society at large. And I'll come back to that, but we are actually looking to get data from society at large, and I'll come back to that in a little while. So the idea is that we then allow people to make informed decisions with the data that they get. For example, if you're a corporate and you're setting up a warehouse for your supply chain, you want to be sure that that warehouse is not going to get flooded, not going to get there's not going to be a landslide that wipes it out. So you can look at the dashboard and you can get some idea of where that warehouse should be. But actually, more importantly than that, you also want to make sure that you don't suffer from physical risk relating to the roads leading up to it. So I mean, you would then be looking at the entire picture to see, where would I want to locate myself and how would I want to look. So that's a picture of the business model. It's fundamentally highly collaborative. It takes data and it basically uses that data to create the environment for a more resilient Malaysia. I just give you the next slide, just a picture. I'm not going to dwell on this because Justine is going to talk about how it looks. But since I've described it to you and you've heard my words, that is what it might, that's a global picture of CO2 emissions. But you can just see how it just shows you where issues are, and how that looks. And we will come back to that later. This is merely just to give you a taster based on what I've said. So what's the data we're looking at? We're looking at data that basically relates to, because we're still at the prototype phase, we're looking at data, a smaller subset of data, but that relates to Malaysia's key climate risks. So those key climate risks are basically temperature, i.e. heat waves, heat stroke, schools closing, businesses closing, people not working, etc., etc. So the heat is one area, and that's wet bulb, heat, humidity, and temperature. Obviously, precipitation. So we've talked about rainfall. We've seen the major issue with rainfall, landslides, droughts, flooding. So that's another area that we want to get the data on. The third is greenhouse gases and emissions. Again, 40% coal-fired power plants, lots of oil and gas installations, etc. So where are those, and where are the climate risks that arise from those? And finally, because of Malaysia's unique biodiversity, there must be one of the most biodiverse countries. We want to make sure that we cover deforestation. So we can see that the biodiversity is maintained, and that's something that we think is very important. So these are basically, for us at this stage in the game, the critical data that we're looking at. So we come down then to to how is that data used. So I was saying to you, we see ourselves as having 3 concentric circles, and the data comes from different parts of those circles. So the central circle is the government, local authority data, which, as I said to you, sits in different data islands and is not shared with anybody. And we need to try and get them to move forward. And we are having discussions with them about that. The next one is around private company data. We're already talking to some of them, and some of them are already agreeable to be sharing their data with us. So that is a good sign. And the third one, which I said I would come back to, is the crowdsourced, what we call hyper-localized data. So our plan is to get 1,000 weather stations and lay them all around the country. Lay them in community centers, in mosques, in schools, etc., where you have community leaders who take ownership of those weather stations. And those weather stations, and we see a number of advantages. One is that those people will own the data, they will feel a responsibility for it, they will understand climate, it'll pervade more across the community in many different parts of the country, and that in itself will improve resilience. And 2 is the quality of the data that we will get will be excellent. It will be real-time, raw data, no biases attached to it, and then we can basically use those in the best way possible. So all in all, and then I think as we grow, we'll move on beyond 1,000 stations, so we can actually get something that is really quite comprehensive as time goes by. So what happens to that data? Well, the data is transmitted to our cloud server, which is basically a server that can take high volume real-time data, and that's transmitted either by API, so you have the government agencies and local authorities data by API, or it's transmitted wirelessly from the weather stations or from satellite images, which would most likely be third-party data that they're sending to us of things like deforestation, etc. We would cleanse it. We have a team that cleanses the data, standardizes it, pulls the data in frameworks, and then effectively what that does is it creates a base of data for us that is clean and accessible, and we can use it. We will then be using business intelligence tools, geographic information systems, to be able to use that data and then to transmit that back to our platform to show you how it might look in terms of climate versus geography. So it makes a huge difference. I'm being a banker, I haven't talked about finance yet, but it is an improved allocation of capital. It allows banks, insurance companies, corporates to be able to visually see where their climate risk lies, and to improve the allocation of their capital towards that, to cover the risks related to that. And again, that adds to overall resilience within the financial system, and then also within the company. Better informed disaster recovery, so as Shukri was saying, you're able to actually have preventative measures when you know where disasters occur. So they don't happen. You can actually step in before that. Adaptation, mitigation, again, similar preventative measures allow you to adapt and mitigate those climate risks. Informed decision making, we've talked about the just transition, awareness and engagement, all of these things. So there are a whole lot of massive value adds that will be, let's say, coming to the country, coming out of this initiative of ours. So the last thing I'd say is it does also address a number of the sustainable development goals of the UN. So decent work and economic growth, reduce inequalities, and climate action. So that's a picture of the business model of it and how it works, a little bit of how the technology works. I'll ask you to just see now.
Thank you all for coming. I think maybe I'll start by asking a few questions, if that's possible. How many of you need data in the roles that you play? How many data that is specifically? Anyone? Oh, that's quite good. That's why I guess you're here. And how many of you find it difficult to find that data? How many would be willing to pay for that data if they were the source? Whoops. All right, you want it. That's why we're giving it for free. Okay. Right, so, I mean, just recapping, I think these are things that we all know, right? I think when you're tracking progress on any initiative that we want to do, we need data to prove or disprove where we stand and what we need to do to close that gap. I think that's a universal truth that I think we can do. And there's no difference when we're doing climate change and what we're trying to track in terms of initiatives. That's where I think the team got together and said we need access to data so that people who are project proponents who are trying to develop projects that are going to have an impact on climate change are going to have the data to prove that what they're doing works. Or they're going to be having data to say, hey, I'm not doing enough, I need to change the way I'm doing it. But if they don't have data, what can they do, right? So that I think is the nexus of why we came together to try and do this initiative, which is the National Climate Dashboard. But what we needed to do it was that we needed timely data. I think all of you know it's very difficult to get. We've spent about a year trying to find that data. It's not easy. Second thing is that it had to be easily accessible, reliable, and had a contextual part to it so that we can use that data in that form. And again, I think veracity was really quite a critical point for us. We saw that as a critical success factor that we wanted to work on. So I think I spoke about this in terms of emission reductions projects. Where a year ago, I think everybody was really excited in terms of carbon credits, and then the Guardian came out and said, oh, 90% of carbon credits were not really valid because of the methodologies, not so much the methodologies, but the data to support that methodology was not accurate. They did it because they're extrapolating data, and now show you some of the differences in terms of what was done before and what can be done now, and how we should collect data in a different way using the available technologies. Right, so Mike showed you one of the screens that we have. We have a variety of dashboards. They are more proof, well, when I say they're proof of concept, it's because the data source is, although publicly available, it is not very current. What you can see here is that Malaysian climate analysis for GHG 2015 to 2021. So you're already talking about data that's 3 years old. But this is what we can find in the public domain. But there's still interesting things here, but maybe not actionable. So you see here down in Johor, there's this data came from a data source called Climate Trace. So this is showing you a Tanjung Bin power station and its emission, but again, this is 2021. So is it more, less now? We don't know. By the time we find out, it may be 3 years from, we'll find out 2024 data in 2037, which is again not really useful. So I think that's one of the key problems that we're having, and I'm sure you will have the same thing. So you can see this one is this is Penang. Yeah, so this is Penang. This one is the offshore field with a flare. But it's interesting, if you're looking at it from the perspective of interest, yeah, you can prove a lot of things. You can prove that these are the areas that are hotspots. You can prove that fossil fuels are your biggest emission source. So you can prove a lot of things here, but is it actionable? Probably not so much. This is tree cover loss from year 2000 to 2022. And here you will see, I think it's 2014 is the peak of the deforestation, but since then it has dropped off. And again, data source is slightly old, 2 years, but it's interesting. The other thing is that we've done the dashboards in such a way that they're visualizations. Right? So you could press play, and it will show you the trend over that 20-year period. Oh, sorry, I didn't. showed it in the previous slide. How do I go back? Yeah, you can all go to this source here, and you can, it's on Microsoft Power BI, and you can look at the dashboards that I'm showing you here. There's a source. So, moving on. Temperature, I think, should we show this earlier, where we look at this area of temperature increases. Again, this is temperature from 1900 to 2020. So again, not the most recent, but you can see trend. I think that's available. You can get data to show trend, but it's not actionable. And I think where we want to go to is actionable data. So this is what I want to show you in terms of the traditional ways of collecting data and maybe the ways that we ways that we can go and make a big difference. And so you can see here, just look at the first column, you have technology where we do industry averages, on-site measurements, but now we have things like remote sensing. Well, it's becoming more available to the private sector. Before it was more government sector type of way of doing it. And the next thing is satellite data. Satellite data has become infinitely cheaper than it was for any of us to use before. And there are many providers that provide satellite data for different sources. But I think the main thing that you can do is use this technology to get data, and you can get it timely. For example, in the satellite data part of things, you can get GHG emissions for a specific location every month, because that satellite will pass over that area every month. And you'll be able to pick up that data. Then you'll be able to say that the Garan plant, every month you can see how much emissions it's creating. That's the power of the satellite data. But it's not easy to get. Right now you have to pay for that because there's a private company that collects that data, and they have a service of selling that. If it was a plantation, for example, the plantation wanted to show for EUDR purposes what was there, or the EU compliance purposes, what they needed to show in terms of their emissions, they would have a plot size over 10,000 acres, and again it's satellite based. I understand that drone Aerodyne is doing something with drones where they can actually map out right to the width of the tree, which I think is really exciting stuff. So I'm really excited about the future of technology and how that data is collected, because the visualizations that I showed you before, that's easily done, but we need the source, and that's where we're having a problem. I think the other thing is, when I told you about cost, the cost of doing this type of data, earlier one of the reasons was it was too costly to use all this new technology, satellites and stuff, but now the cost has dropped considerably, and that gives us a lot of opportunity to get the data. And I think that's something that as we go forward, we as a team need to figure out how we're going to be able to collect the data. But one way that we thought of, which Mike spoke about a little bit earlier, which was these weather stations, right? Is that there is a concept that is gaining a lot of momentum right now, which is called DePIN, which is decentralized physical infrastructure. It's a cousin of DeFi. If you've heard of DeFi, decentralized finance, they have something called decentralized physical infrastructure. So the way it works is, like, we have 1,000 sites which have a weather station. That data comes in from the weather station, is stored on the blockchain. Now everybody who supplies data to our centralized source is then paid in a token. So they are rewarded or incentivized to provide that data to us. Maybe because that data will be used by insurance companies. I think this morning you heard from the insurance companies how they need data for modeling purposes. So there's a use. And if we can figure out a way to use that revenue stream to to incentivize everybody to buy their own weather station and install it, then that's a way that we can collect data and then share it to the public in a way that they can use it. So the idea behind that is localized weather forecasting. So right now, when you hear a weather forecast, it says rain in KL. KL is quite a big area, right? But you don't know, and then we all talk about it, right? Oh, I was in Puchong, it was raining there really heavily, but it's not raining in Mount Kiara. But then, what we need to be having is knowledge of where that rain actually is. And then we can have a lot more use of that data. So we're very excited by this project. I think we're trying to push ahead of it and try and figure out how to get the weather stations up, how to get the public to participate in being able to put up those weather stations. We need, of course, for them to hope they're going to pay for the weather station. They have to have a reliable internet connection and electricity. Obviously, these are the main key components. But once we have that, then we can put this infrastructure in. So I think that this is really what I wanted to say today. But maybe some of the questions that you can come up with. I think we all know that data is important, firstly. We know that the technology is changing, that now this data is becoming easily accessible. And I think we just need to find the right model for us to be able to get that data so that we can share it with the stakeholders that need it. Because without that, it's very hard for everybody to do. And just one more thing, just to spark some imagination. I think we talked about carbon credit, and one of the problem with carbon credit was the data to support those credits. And now the concept has changed. It's now, I think, when you talk to buyers of credits, they don't want credits anymore. They want debits. What's the difference between a credit and a debit? Credit is a forecast of how much I'm going to save in the future. A debit is how much I saved already. So people want debits, and you need to prove that you have actually achieved a certain reduction or sequestration value to support that credit. Otherwise, nobody wants it. So I think data is becoming much, much more important in this fight. Okay. Thank you all.
Any questions?
Sure. Hi, I'm just referring to some issue like this dashboard. I think it's compatible with the five. Definitely, when it comes to data, public information, I have two questions. Firstly, if I understand your goal is to ensure that the public is able to access information as far as weather is concerned, so they can take actions to prevent themselves from doing disasters.
Correct.
Okay. The thing is that one thing is that there's more like projection of some kind of event or circumstances like relating to weather, flood, and all these things. But what is that your role? How does it conflict the weather station which we are accessible to anyway now? What is the difference between your roles there versus the information that you need to get? Though it's not the most accurate, but there is some kind of element, especially the major floods and major rainfall. The next thing is that about data collection. You might have remembered about the recent data that our minister was trying to provide public disagreement. And also, how we think we will be able to get very good response to that, right? And also that we have the EPA and the third question is about why do you need this? It is just to ensure public the objective to understand climate situation. Why do you need individual information? Why do you need this? Why not this information specific, as you mentioned, down the boundaries? They might have some of the key data which will be, I think, will be sufficient for you to play a role. That's just the theory. That's
I don't know if you heard the question, but I think to your first question, I think I'm talking about the difference between weather and climate. Right? So yeah, weather is, you get the weather from Malaysia every day, and you're going to know, as Jaseen said, it's raining in Puchong, but it's not raining over here. That decisions are about actually the much bigger question of climate. So it's looking at those types of maps to say actually where are the blighted areas, where are the areas that are green, and if I'm somebody who's working in a coal-fired power station and I've just lost my job because the station has been decommissioned, I'm going to be wondering actually, what do I do next and where do I go? So Met Malaysia is not going to help me if I know it's really push on. But this type of information which shows me actually in a much bigger, more comprehensive way where different areas are and what the issues are would be helpful for me. So that's the relation. In terms of data, I think it is a big issue, and I think that other members I've been talking to also, not just our team, but other teams, all came up to me as well and said, we've got problems with data. And I said, I get it exactly. Yes, the government is sitting on a lot of data. We don't actually even know at this point the quality of that data, the timeliness, who's got what. We know where it is. Narian's got some, and Ahmad's got some, and I'm sure civil defense has also got some. It's sitting all over. And we are talking to them now to try and get them to share that with us. And it may well be that, as just to Steve's point, you might find it's all 2021 or it's all 2023. So we need to try and get that, and then we can make a decision. You can still use it. As I said, it may not be actionable, but it may still give you a much more comprehensive picture of the country and the risks. It probably will do that. So really good data for us will be the weather stations, which is real-time, raw data, actually know where it's raining, because obviously weather is different in different areas, what the weather is like, and when that data comes back to us, that would be great. And also a lot of the Reuters type data, which is strong data that they've got, and they might provide to us because we won't compete to them, and we put their name up on our site, and they'll get a lot of kudos for it, and they might feel it's worth doing from a marketing perspective. So we might also get good data.
Sorry, can I add to that? I think, one of the things when you use the DPIN, what they call it, is that this data is stored on the chain. So to every device is registered to the chain and sends data directly to the chain. So there's no tampering, there's no one in between who's manipulating data. This data is coming raw straight into the chain. The other thing is it's giving you the variables from each of the sensors. It's not giving you the output. In certain cases, people just want the output. Maybe we will have to work with somebody to give us that processing, to give them just the output like, heavy rain in this area, it means highlighting the flooding. So we're just giving an alert. But in certain cases, some users want the raw data. They don't want the processed data. So that raw data is very difficult to get. You will not get that. And I can tell you, even though Met Malaysia has an API, we've tried it. It's not that useful because it's actually forecast data. And if it's forecast data and the forecast is wrong, they don't go back and change. I mean, they don't store it as history. The history is actually still the forecast data, so we don't know whether, if it said it was going to rain yesterday, if you look at it today, we don't know whether that was correct or not. So things like that, I mean, they probably know, but what they're releasing to the public is not that useful. So those are the limitations. And I think, to Mike's point, is yes, we have gone knocking on a lot of doors trying to get data, and it's. I mean, some of the data, the way they were collected in the first place was like I said before, it's extrapolation. It's not using the latest technology to get the data. They're using an acreage sample, and then they're extrapolating that data. We don't think that's the kind of data that we need for the future.
Very further question, just to add kind of as an extension to this question, because you mentioned about, and this is new to me, I'm very curious about it. You mentioned the difference between climate and weather, right? To my very limited understanding, climate is over a long haul and study trends over multi-decadal company. So it sounds like the weather station you're looking at is collecting recent data rather than climate
will need to get a period of time when we get that data, so we can then see the trend in that coming out of that particular area where that weather station is. But the beauty of that data is that it is raw, and so it's unbiased, and we know that is accurate as it actually was.
Even those weather stations can be replaced by that, or maybe there's a way to put theoretical context.
Yeah, I know, but they don't share. Yeah, so that's it. I mean, honestly, if we can get people to share their data, then it will. I think it'll solve our issues.
Yeah, because I also saw that the data will be auditable. Then my question will be auditable to what standard and for whom? That's one. And who are the end users of this? What's the end point if we're talking about climate, right? What are the milestones for the study?
Auditable part, as I said, is on-chain. On-chain means anybody can audit it. It's directly there. The same thing that actually this is a parallel. When you go back to the carbon credits, one of the things that people are talking about now is how to issue carbon credits from on-chain data. Why it's on-chain is because it's immutable, and therefore once it's there, you can't change it, you can't manipulate it. Right? It's the same concept that we're using as well, where the data is immediately put into the chain, and then you can look at the data from there. So when you say auditable, what you want to audit is not the raw data, but you want to audit the output. And we are not giving output unless, because we're just collecting data and giving it to people to use. Those people who use it, they will have to explain their methodology.
Yeah, how are we doing for time? 2 minutes.
Your dashboard is ready already, the pilot dashboard. Is it ready already?
Yeah, the one that I showed you is running.
You already tried some data already?
The one that you saw, that is screenshot from a Microsoft Power BI.
So you can run all those.
So basically now you need visual down what size of data to really test it and continue to improve it.
Because, as I said, what we have now is not actionable in that sense. It is old data, relevant data to some people, but may not be actionable data. We want to move to a more actionable data set, which is more, may not be real time, but near real time at least, or at least within a month. But now we're 3 years old. I think if you look at COP and the data that is reported at COP, typically is 3 to 5 years old. So you can imagine all the biggest minds in the world are discussing about data that's already 5 years old. I mean, how does that work?
That's history, yeah?
So it's sort of like the academic one, where it's not something that you're working on.
I have a question. Like, how detailed can you zoom into the area? For example, can you see like Cuba or like Shala? Because like, I'm just wondering, on top of my mind, if like, would it be used against like people who have real estate in those areas that are like, sort of like red flag and one area, which would then hamper like their real estate prices?
No, that's a great question. I think that is one of the questions that the government is worried about. And I think so. We have not yet started. We're going to be getting the geographical information system. When we get that included, you will be able to go down to. At this point, we can't. But once we get that in place, it's called ArcGIS. Then you will be able to do much more stuff. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why the government is like, I don't want to share the data because I don't want to have that reaction.
Yeah, because like the vulnerables are mostly the ones that we those like flood prone areas.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, now the trend is, let me share how to plan this. So, they share the risk area, which area is prone to earthquake, which area is prone to thunderstorms or typhoons. So the thing is, whenever we share, Yes, of course, the most affected parties in the private sector involved in the investment for the area, even for the local government, they have some it creates panic to the community. But then, what the local government do is they need to improve the area so that it can be, preventing this kind of disasters or this kind of climate hazards to be fully impacted, or they, at least they try to reduce the impact of the climate hazards. So that is why, if we have this kind of data, yeah, we have to be bold, right? We have to be bold in making decisions. So everybody will have to participate in this. Even like you can see, yeah, of course we have government data, but you can see now they are moving, especially in the Philippines. Right? They get public to participate in giving the weather stations, giving the data information of whether the current conditions of their land. We try to promote some kind of the community-based disaster risk reduction efforts throughout the community, giving their information towards the government agencies. We know the capability of government, we know the capability of the private sector is very limited. So that is why we are trying to promote everybody to be in this game together.
The other thing is, we're not trying to be the single source.
Yeah.
We're trying to provide a source. If there are other data sources and the government suddenly upgrades their technology and what have you, or wants to share more data, then that's good. More data than areas.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can use it for reconciling, cross-referencing some things that we may feel based on our data may be disproved by their data. So that is also important, but it's got to start somewhere.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.